Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat. I am your host. And for today's episode, we're going to be talking about why you should stop making promises that you can't keep. These promises are promises you make to yourself and promises you make to other people. And the reason that you have to stop doing this is because every time you make a promise and you break it, you are breaking trust with yourself as well as breaking trust with other people. But this also is really important when it comes to your own ideas of self-worth and self-trust. If you are promising things that you maybe deep down know you cannot maintain or sustain, and obviously inevitably you don't do it, you're telling yourself, or showing yourself rather, look, you are incapable. You cannot be there. You cannot show up in the way you say you're going to show up. Now, this is really important for anybody who struggles with self-worth and not feeling good enough. If you feel that way about the people in your life and you feel like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, you have those struggles within yourself, and normally maybe you either push people away or you people please, that making promises that you can't keep, that action in and of itself is already showing to you that you are unworthy. It's reinforcing that belief within yourself. Because you are saying, okay, I'm going to make this promise because I want to be this kind of person. I wish I could be this kind of person. Or I know they want this. I know they want me to say this to them or be there for them in this way. That'll make them like me more, or that'll make them see me as worthy and valid. But deep down, you know you cannot do it. And there's nothing wrong with not being able to do certain things. That's part of life. Like, you can't do everything. You can't show up in every single way for every single person. You are not for everybody all the time. But to make that promise and then not show up, not be able to do it, of course, will disappoint the other person, make them not trust you, but it'll show you that you can't trust yourself because you keep saying you're going to do this thing or show up in this way. And then you're like, wow, see, yeah, I'm not capable of it. I am unworthy. People shouldn't be around me. And then what happens is you lean into avoidance. You push people away because you're showing yourself, see, I make promises I can't keep. People don't deserve that. I don't want to hurt anybody. And then you push people away. And then it creates a cycle of reinforcing this belief of, yeah, I'm not good enough. And this also applies to the promises you make to yourself. If you are saying to yourself, I'm going to get up tomorrow at this time, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do all these things, and you don't every single day, just making that one decision, that one promise, and you break that promise again, it's going to reinforce, see, I can't do it. I'm not capable. I'm not good enough. I'm lazy. I'm whatever. Maybe it's not about you having to get up at that time. Maybe there is a way to work around that. Maybe the time is just too early for you. Maybe it's too early for the way your life functions, and you're forcing yourself to make a promise to yourself that is unrealistic for you and your circumstances right now. That's going to make it even worse. An example of this is I struggled with insomnia a couple of years ago, and because of that, I barely slept at night. I would fall asleep at like 5 a.m. And to fall asleep at 5 a.m. and then expect myself to get up early the next day, or even like if I fell asleep a little bit earlier than that, but to expect myself to get up early the next day was unrealistic. But every time I made that promise and I really wanted myself to do that, and then I couldn't do it the next day because, of course, logically you can't. You need more sleep than that. I would feel awful. I would feel, not good enough. Like, oh, I'm lazy. See, I can't even do this simple thing. It was when I started showing myself grace and working with my circumstances and making promises that I could keep, that I knew I could keep, that my self-worth grew, and also my insomnia got better because I stopped putting so much pressure and stress on myself. I just let it be and worked with it, not against it all the time. So it's important to make sure that even the promises you make to yourself are ones that are within your abilities, truly, or your circumstances right now. Maybe your abilities are more than what you can do right now, but maybe your circumstances aren't allowing it, and that's okay too. Understanding what is the most, mindful and kindest and shows you the most respect that you can do right now. What thing can do that for you right now? What promise can you make that does that for you, that honors you and your circumstances, and keeping those promises? And those will be easier to keep. Now, I think sometimes we can fall into the trap of feeling like the harder a promise is to keep, the more effort, the more work, the more difficult, then the more valid it is. The easy promises are simple. They're unworthy. What's the point if they're that easy? That's a really bad narrative to have in your mind, because you're not allowing yourself to gain evidence that you are capable by doing the simple things. to build those blocks of evidence for yourself to be able to use as references when you are working on your self-worth. You need to lean into the easy stuff. Just do the stuff that is easy to maintain. That's really important. To only see struggle as valid and worthy is going to make you feel like, okay, I have to always struggle. But if you always have to struggle and it's hard to get that thing and you don't get it because it's difficult, you're then, again, reinforcing the idea of, see, I'm not good enough. I can't get the things that I want to get. This also applies to the promises you make to yourself. Make simple promises, or make your promises as simple as possible, as easy to do as possible, so that you can show yourself like, see, I am capable. And it just makes your life easier and more enjoyable ultimately. But again, when it comes to relationships or people in your life, I've seen this happen many times where someone will try to be the kind of person they think that person wants them to be. And this is something that I hear a lot in the early stages of dating, right? When somebody shows up in a way where they're almost playing a character. And sometimes it's malicious, I'm sure. And then sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's that person feeling like, okay, I have been taught throughout my childhood that in order to be valid and approved of and loved, I have to show up completely inauthentically to me. I have to show up as somebody else. And I have to keep that facade up as much as I can. But of course, it's a facade. It's not real. So it's not going to be something that you can sustain forever. But that person shows up in a way that they think the other person wants them to, right? So they make promises that they think that person wants them to make, but deep down they know they cannot keep those promises because it's just not aligned with them. Not that they don't want to keep promises, that they are completely incapable of it. It's just not aligned with them. And if something's not aligned with you, of course, it's not going to be natural for you to do. It's not going to be effortless. Now, obviously, things take effort, things take work. I'm not saying that everything has to be completely easy peasy all the time, but things that flow organically because they are aligned with you. If you are showing up as a different character because what you think someone wants from you, what they expect from you to feel worthy and valid and approved of, and then you don't show up that way, you're going to spiral into feeling unworthy again. It's going to just make you believe that narrative over and over again, which is really sad. It is really sad. It's not good for you. It's not good for the other person. Nobody wins in this scenario. And I want to be mindful of saying that this is not, again, not always malicious. This person who's making these promises is not doing it necessarily to manipulate you. Sometimes they are, sure. Nothing's black and white like that. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're doing it because of those deep wounds that have not been healed or worked on or recognized even for what they are. They're doing it because they think they have to be this way for people to love them or to care about them. And that's really sad. So this is just for someone who maybe has dealt with someone who can't keep promises, to just be a bit more aware of what might be going on. Not to necessarily completely absolve that person of their responsibility for making promises they can't keep, obviously. But just so you have some more clarity and maybe not internalize it as much as something that's about you and your worth, right? But yeah, if you are the person who's making these promises that you can't keep, the more you do that, the more you will validate to yourself, see, I am not good enough. I am incapable. So of course no one's going to care about me. Of course no one's going to love me. Of course, whatever other self-limiting beliefs you have about yourself. You have to make promises you can keep. Only make promises you can keep. And sometimes that means not being the kind of person that this specific person wants from you. And that's okay. That is the sacrifice you have to make. And because it's better for you and it's better for them in the long run. And that's the hardest part too, right? Not being convenient for another person, not being able to be everything for that person. I'm sure it would be great if we could all do that, but we can't. We are all different. We all have different abilities and circumstances and whatever. So if you can't, be honest about it. There's no shame in that. And maybe some people will make you feel shame for it, but it's like, just know within yourself, there's no shame for being honest about what you can or can't do. That's okay. Or what you don't want to do. That's valid too. It doesn't have to be a reflection of the other person's worth either. Or if you're the person receiving this, it's not about you. Some people just don't want to be this way. Some people, like as an example, I guess, if you're in a relationship with someone and one person wants to have children, the other person doesn't. To promise them children when you know you don't want children, that's not good, right? It'll turn out very badly at the end. So to admit, look, I don't want children. That's enough of a reason to not have children, right? It's enough. I don't want them. You have to be honest about that and not make a promise you can't keep. And then it also gives the other person the opportunity to decide, right? Let them decide. Let them have all the data that they need to make a decision as to whether this is something to work long term. And of course, some people will not want it to work long term, and that's painful too. I understand there's so much pain, there's so much discomfort surrounding all of this, but in the long run, those sacrifices, those painful moments, that discomfort will be better for you and for the other person in the long run. So be mindful of the promises you can keep and be honest. Just be honest about them, to yourself even. Like, it starts with you. It starts with being honest to yourself about these things so that you are aware of what your limits are and your limitations are, and being okay with them and not shaming yourself for them, because again, everybody's different. Everybody has different limitations, different abilities, and that's fine. There are people out there that will fit perfectly into that for you, and vice versa, and some that won't. But you have to be able to recognize who will and who won't by being honest and open about what you can and can't do, what promises you can keep, so that you also don't feel unworthy and then perpetuate that cycle of, I'm unworthy, so I'm going to push people away, or I'm going to keep trying to make people like me by making promises I can't keep, and and then so on and so forth. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. Feel free to reach out to me for a one-to-one call if you want to talk about these things in more detail. You can also follow me on social media. I have a Substack where I write about these topics. But other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.